You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. It is the middle ground between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Thank you. So you may not have realized it, but you just have left Vox Ticino. It's going to be crucial to stay calm for what comes next, because you have entrusted to a new dimension known as the IT zone. And here you are in 50 after Unix, so in 2020 of our area, in a small country of Western Europe named France. You are now a project manager within its Ministry of Education. The French government has recently committed in modernizing its education system. And your boss has tasked you with leading this reform. Nevertheless, like any self-respecting organization, top-down is never far away, and you are strongly encouraged to enlist the services of external consulting companies. And before you even get a chance to voice your concern, your boss explained that these directives come from the big boss himself, slipping in the suggestion to add the McKinney consulting company in the bidding process along the way. So McKinney, you already heard about them, but you don't really know what they do, so you decide to go on their website. So this one, the real one in production, the French one actually, I will translate that in English for you here. So for now, as you can see, there's not a lot of information about them, but you have the Arc de Triomphe, a French sign that means that you're a winner. And you can also notice that in the IT zone, McKinney is written with a S we don't pronounce, because I don't want to be shot by them after the end of that talk. So here the aim is to know how they can actually help you in the reform of the education system of a whole country. When you scroll here, you see their first value proposition. So they say to be an accelerator of innovation in more than 200 areas of expertise. So it means this is a quite big consulting company, right? But right in the middle, they state to have more than 5,000 technological profiles. So it's a bit confusing. Why are they unfazing just one of their 200 areas of expertise? Does it mean there are more tech consulting companies than the other thing? But never mind. Then they try to create some empathy with you by introducing you to some of their team members. But don't get them wrong, you're here on the home page, so they are not anybody. You have the managing director of McKinney in France, a member of the Global Executive Committee, and the leader of the Transformation Division. And you can also notice that if you click on those people, they have a dedicated page saying how great they are, but unfortunately, that doesn't mean a thing to you, since it's not really helpful for your mission. Being back on the home page here, you have here the first call to action on that website that invites you to see some other profiles. So let's see who are those people. But once again, they are not anybody. As you can see here, they are directors and senior directors. But you discover as well that they each lead one business unit, such as the McKinney Cancer Center. So I didn't expect that, but maybe they have some hospital as well. And the digital division, because who doesn't have that today in a big consulting company? So let's see if there are some people for education. Doesn't sound well, but never mind. Back on the main page there, you have their publication. So this is a good thing because it's a demonstration of their know-how. So what do we have here? Fusion, next source of carbon-free energy for Europe. So maybe they also have physicists. But anyway, banking sector, industrialization, triple transition in the distribution sector. Not a single one, triple one. How complex and clever this is. But unfortunately, nothing related to education, right? And it ends with a full section taking the full page, inviting you to work for them. But you're not even the profile for that. So you start wondering to who has been built that website, for potential customers like you or for new talent, right, that they're trying to recruit. Anyway, it ends with the location of their own offices in Paris. So it's been good 5 minutes. It's been good 5 minutes you are on that website, but you still don't know how they could actually help you. But you remember that when you land into that page, at the very top of it, there was a menu there. Great user experience, by the way, with a tandem our job, so let's discover what their job is. It looks like their job is 3D rotating balls, but okay. That will only emphasize this feeling that they try to position themselves on the tech industry. So you are really about to give up when you see that little nice animation on the arrow here that invites you to scroll a bit more. Perhaps eventually you will have the information you need. And what do you discover? They have a matrix organization with sectoral and functional skill center. You don't care about that, right? But finally, if you dig a lot, you will find something about education there. What they do about it, testimony of their clients, publications, and because they really like that formula, it ends with the people working on that business unit. But once again, this is only the top of the consulting crop with the partners and the senior partners. The poor little business analyst won't even get a mention there. So in the end, you learn more about McKinney organizations and how they could actually help you. So you leave them with a frustrating sense of being unfulfilled. And this feeling doesn't come from nowhere. This is a clear sign that you just encoded the IT zone. The IT zone is a world where science and belief band together. This is a realm governed by unseen forces that has a strong influence on what people will produce. Because you might be tempted here to point fingers at the user experience designer of McKinney, when in fact it exists a phenomenon beyond their control that partly drove them to build a website that way. To explain that, to find an explanation, we need to go back to the 13th of July 1998. The New York Times published a front-page story that altered the landscape of the IT zone by showcasing the remarkable achievement of the Dr. Jacob Nielsen. And despite what this picture might imply, he's not the one who invented the mouse, although he seems quite delighted to be holding one. What a picture, right? But anyway, so he was considered at that time as the guru of the web page usability. He's one of the pioneers of the user experience. And in the late 90s, he set out in a mission to make the web more usable because he noticed that companies creating their own websites has the tendency to over-focus on one search engine metric for indexing that you know as, sorry? Yeah, but it has a name, SEO. You heard about that? Yes? So in fact, something older than that, this is the CEO. Never heard about it? The C-level ego optimization? No one? But this is a real thing. In an article he wrote in 1997, Top Tech Mistake of Web Management, Topçu was letting the site structure mirror your org chart. He said that users should not have to care how your company is organized, so they should not be able to deduce your organizational structure from the structure of your website. And a classic sign of this mismanaged website is when the homepage has a button for each of the senior vice presidents in the company, something you didn't experience at all in 2024 today. But he's also backed up in his observation by another pioneer of the user experience, Dr. Nigel Bevan, who wrote in an article of 1998, organization often produce websites with a content and a structure which mirror the internal concern of the organization rather than the needs of the user of the site. This is the reason why on the McKinney website, they were pushing a lot about the fact that they are hiring and the fact that they are positioning themselves on the tech industry, despite this is not your concern at all. So since late 90s, we already knew that this is a bad practice. So what is keeping people from doing that today? As you dig deeper for answer, you find yourself transported to a new era of the IT zone, and now jumping ahead to Redmond near Seattle in the United States, and we are now in 38 after Unix, so 2018. You are now the marketing director at Microsoft, and you are working on a strategy to boost the sales of the commercial hit of that time, which was Windows Vista. So suddenly, your boss burst in your office in a rage because one of your competitors had just released this ad campaign.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC, here with good news for anyone who's ever been frustrated by Vista.
How are you fixing the problem?
No, I'm making them easier to live with my new line of calming teas. There's Crashy Time Chamomile, just the thing to soothe the nerves after a Vista-related crash. Or if Vista's making your applications run slow, there's Pomegranate Patience. Now, mornings are raspberry restart time for
That's
me.
great, PC.
Also afternoons, but
We should move on.
yes, let's move on, Mac, to my line of Vista stress-relieving bath salts.
So this is a real ads they made at that time. So it's a complete disaster. Your competitor is openly mocking the small issues or the big issues of your new flagship product. Because indeed, frustrated by the frequent crashes and the hardware compatibility issues, your customers are either choosing to go back to Windows XP, your previous operating system, but for the first time, and this is the worst part of it, they are going to the beaten Apple competitor. And the pressure is so high that you have to let PC manufacturers to sell new machines under Windows XP instead of Vista. But in this unfortunate situation, two researchers from Microsoft and one from the University of Maryland wondered if they could turn this setback into an opportunity for a study. So they kicked out an analysis of the 15 million lines of code spread across the more than 3,000 binaries of Vista. And the aim of that study was to evaluate how well traditional quality indicators are good in the prediction of software bugs in production. Amongst those indicators, you had the code churn, code complexity, dependencies, the coupling, code coverage, you know that as the test coverage as well, and the number of bugs detected before the release. Since they knew which module had bugs in production, they are trying to find out if there is a relationship between the fact that the module is failing and the fact that it has a low code coverage, for example. But before doing that, they added another indicator, the organizational structure, which is totally weird, right? Because this is not technical at all. So to be a good predictor of software bugs in production, those indicators must have a precision and a recall as close as possible to 100%. I won't explain what are those things, but here are the results. And as you can see, the organizational structure had the better score. So in this study of 2008, the researchers have demonstrated that in the case of Vista, the state of the organization was a better predictor of software bugs in production than the code coverage. So in other words, organization eats code quality tools at breakfast. It's not Sonar that will help you if you are doing some safe agile frameworks, but sorry about that. It was an easy shot. The aim of the researchers, in fact, was trying to confirm one statement that was made several decades before in 1975 by the Dr. Frederick Brooks. In the Mythical Man Month book, he wrote that product quality is strongly affected by organization structure. Some people know that book already? Yes. By the way, this book is not for the faint-hearted believers in the Gantt chart cult, as it might give them a serious case of heartburn, but anyway. Do you sense that slight tingle at the back of your neck? This is because you have been taken another leap, and you are now, just to make sure you're still awake. So this is the sound of the train pulling you to London St. Pancras in 46 after Unix, and you make your way to the headquarters of the multinational online travel company you're working for as an architect. You have defined the architecture of the train ticket reservation as follows, finding it was the best way to meet the business need, which is to offer a standardized way to reserve train regardless of the country. Because your company is selling train tickets all over the world, but each country deals with the train differently. Since your company does not want to do custom development for each of these countries, this architecture is broken down in 3 agnostic components. Rail Supply here aggregates the API of all the train carriers, such as SBB in Switzerland, SNCF in France, Trenitalia in Italy. And on top of it, you have Rail Shopping, responsible for all the business logic, such as selecting a train with a fare, search for train, and so on. And then the UI. So this architecture has been defined 3 years ago, And it's no time for you to come down your ivory tower as an architect to see what the developers have done. Because you heard that even though these components are quite new, they are already really hard to maintain in production. So you took a look at the code and, oh my God, what was delivered is exactly what we were trying to avoid. Each component is divided by country using if statements, and some features have been duplicated by country instead of being shared as planned. What went wrong? Is it a matter of insufficient skill or maturity of the development teams? After some investigation, in fact, you find out that it came from one belief of the management, which is the feature team. So the feature team is something that can work, but if you, some people doesn't know what is a feature team? No? No? Yes? The feature team is intended to boost the autonomy of a team by letting them to work across all the layers of the information system to implement a feature. But usually that feature is an entire project, and when it's done, they will do something else. Who will maintain that? We don't know. But anyway, here, in this real use case, the management had 3 teams on 3 different time zones, otherwise it's too easy. And they decided to specialize them by country, thinking it would be easier to manage since the rollout plan in production was to do first an MVP for France, then another one for the UK, and finally Germany. However, this team had their own manager, they were on different time zones, different schedule, different objective, but they were all working on the same code base. Since that from a project perspective, they had little reason to collaborate, this belief with the pressure to deliver led to teams protecting themselves from the others to secure their deadline. And that's why we ended up with my if my country situation. And the worst part of it is that since the ownership of each component here is not clear at all, no one wants to bear with the cost of the technical debt. So it looks like the IT zone is trying to send you a message. It seems that your user experience and your product design, the product and code quality, and the architecture are strongly impacted by your organization. So far, we have seen only symptoms, but what can be an explanation of all those things? To find this explanation, now we will go to April 1968. Dr. Melvin Conway published an article titled How Do Committees Invent?, where he explores how organizations design systems. And now we will do a little exercise that you will be able to reproduce on your own organization, but your management will get upset about it. But anyway, so let's consider an e-commerce platform like that. It's made up of 4 subsystems here: user management, shopping feature, payment, billing. A system can be anything from a web page to a software product, but it can be also your phone or even a car. And Melvin Conway wonders if there is a relationship between the structure of the system and the structure of the organization in charge of it. He noticed that whatever the context, for each of the subsystems, you will be able to find in the organization a team in charge of it. Quite easy. To make sure that the whole system works, some of the subsystems need to interface with each other. In computer science, an interface can be data transfer through an API. He points out also that when 2 subsystems need to interface, then the related team need to communicate in order to negotiate a specification of this interface. In large organizations, this cross-team communication can be facilitated by a coordinator that today can be a scrum master or a product owner, right? When there is no link between 2 subsystems, such as shopping and billing, there is no requirement for those teams to collaborate or negotiate anything. Melvin Conway demonstrated then that there is a close relationship between the structure of the system and the structure of the organization that designs it. It's not uncommon for a team to be in charge of several subsystems. In that case, the structure of the organization becomes a collapsed version of the structure of the system. And sometimes this is the opposite, because you can have several teams on the same subsystem. This similarity, this structural similarity between the system and the organization is what we call an homomorphism. And there is the twist. Because you can think that Melvin Conway didn't invent something really groundbreaking by saying that, but there is some properties behind this homomorphism that can be really annoying if you don't know them when you build software and system. To give you some example, let's say you are at the very beginning of a project. You only have the business need. The structure of the system is not defined yet, but management has already chosen this organization. As you know, to address the business need, we can have several possible solutions. And the role of this organization is to choose the best fit by comparing those solutions according to their drawbacks and their advantages. To simplify the problem here, let's say that there is only two options for the problems they are trying to solve. But we do like we are omniscient, right? For now, they didn't discover those solutions. And let's assume that the second one is the best one. If you compare the solution, what we can see, there is an interface between user and billing that doesn't exist there, and there is as well a checkout subsystem that has been spread across shopping and payment in the first option. So now the million-dollar question is, will this predefined organization be able to discover and choose the second option, which is the best one? If you take a look at this organization, there is no formal communication between user and billing, and there is no checkout team as well. So if you apply the homomorphism rule, they should rather choose the first option, which is not the best one. But why? Because the user and billing team may not realize that by collaborating with each other, they will be able to find a better design for the system by introducing this interface. But the worst part is regarding shopping and payment, because they will struggle to envision the emergence of a checkout subsystem that sits across their scopes, because this is the management who predefines their scopes, right? So it has a strong impact on the way they think about the problem. And as you know, in the corporate world, the structure of the communication is not something really flexible, right? So it means that this organization will be constrained in creating a system that looks like its own structure. And the larger the organization is, the more pronounced this tendency becomes. That's why Melvin Conway said, the very act of choosing an organization means and implies that you make design choices, implicitly or not. And the fact of choosing an organization will narrow down the range of the possible solution, potentially excluding design that could be better. To give you a concrete example of that, Melvin Conway talked about one organization in the 60s made up of 8 people that were to task in building a COBOL and an ALGOL compiler. Because they had timing issues and budget issues as well, they decided to split and assign 5 people on the COBOL compiler and 3 on the ALGOL one. As a result, the COBOL compiler ran in 5 phases while the ALGOL one in 3 only, although the complexity is the same. But not everyone agreed with that observation. A new perspective came from Topçu in 1996. Topçu said that if you were to task 5 people in building a COBOL compiler, this compiler will run in 4 phases instead of 5, just because someone has to be the manager. This is just one effect of the Conway law, but there is some others. So let's say that, again, you are at the beginning of the project. As you know, usually you don't put a lot of people there to avoid overcrowding. You don't really know where you will go. You have the problem to analyze. But a manager is never to find this matter, and a manager knows that they will be blamed if they miss the deadline without employing all the people they have at their disposal. And this will create a kind of pressure on the initial designers there, who would prefer to continue tackling the complexity of the problem until they can reduce it in a way they find a solution, rather than fragmenting the knowledge by delegating to others. But since the management deems it too risky to proceed this way, they will have no choice but to delegate to reinforcement, themselves reinforce, to secure the deadline as much as possible. According to Conway, this is rooted inside the belief that the work effort is something linear. It means that for some people, the work of 2 people on 4 months is equivalent to the work of 4 people on 2 months. And to make fun of that, Frederick said that the bearing of a child takes 9 months, no matter how many women are assigned to the task. But let's go back to our organization that has grown a lot. As you know, in the corporate world, we have management guidelines, such double pizza team with one manager per team, no pineapple on the pizza, obviously. So this rule will shape the organization, establishing a hierarchy based on delegation, right? The initial designers, they already have some knowledge, so obviously they will take the lead. This means that the organization will take form even before defining the structure of the system. And once the organization exists, it gets used. And then you have to make sure that everyone gets busy, you know, the developers, right? So it means that you will arbitrarily split the problem and split it in a way that everyone has a small amount of it. It also implies that some intersection of responsibility, like this one in gray, because it has been split arbitrarily, right, will go unnoticed. Because when you delegate to subgroups, you created scopes that will act as blinders for this group. Basically, this is what we call silos in management. So that's why there is no such thing as a design group which is both organized and unbiased, like said Melvin Conway. So it means that your organization has a strong impact on the way you build systems, right? But there is something even worse. So he said something that sounds a bit complicated, but this is really easy to understand. He said that when delegation takes place, the quality of the communication disintegrates. What does it mean? In fact, the initial designer, they have to step back from the problem analysis to now handle knowledge sharing and coordination. However, this step back weakens their understanding of the problem, right? So now, if you have two people from hierarchically distant teams that need to agree about an interface, the decision-making process becomes more complex. Because if they disagree, what says management guidelines? Yes, you go up the delegation chain involving people which are further from the problem analysis. And if those people does not agree, you go up again, involving someone that is even further, and most of the time this person is not technical at all. And it means that the structure of the communication will resemble to the hierarchical structure of the organization, and by homomorphism, it will be reflected in the systems they build. According to Conway, this is why military tend to create systems that looks like their org chart. As you may know, military people have created a COBOL language. If you take a look at the structure of a COBOL program, it's like a regiment with division and section. So it means that the structure of large systems tend to disintegrate during development, qualitative more so than with small systems, because usually you also have, for small systems, you have small organization, usually. This disintegration of communication, Frederick Brooks illustrated it well by saying that when you had 3 people in the team, you only had three channels of communication. But when we moved to 11 people, as in our example, we didn't move to 11 channels as well. We moved to 55 channels of communication. So it means that the communication effort is not linear. So it also means that the work effort cannot be either. And we have seen that a system built by 3 people will not be shaped the same way than a system built by 11 people, right? Melvin Conway adds that 3 well-picked people will create a better system because all assumption of parallelism that might be true when we are peeling potatoes goes up in smoke when we are designing system. And this idea of adding more and more people to secure the deadline and speed up the process will lead the organization toward its bureaucratic form, introducing overhead of communication synchronization and unnecessary processes. That's why at one time it becomes necessary to receive communication in order to that people get some work done. This is counterintuitive, but this is true. Who ever complained about having too many ceremonies or meetings there? Everyone, right? So now you know that, and you know the effect of the homomorphism. What can we say about off-the-shelf organization pattern, totally agnostic of what you are supposed to build? Like that? You know that? Yes? It is safe. So it's a full range of hierarchy and full graph of communication path. So in my opinion, they will create something which is called the distributed monolith. But once again, I will have some enemies after that, but anyway. I didn't state the view yet, right? So what says the Conway's law? Organizations with design systems are constrained to produce design which are copies of the communication structure of this organization. This is why when you were on the McKinney website, the first thing you discovered were the org charts starting from the top. And as you delve into the website, the further you went down the layer of the organization. The second things you discovered were their matrix organization, even before knowing how they can help you. So this is a good example, even today, about one organization where their communication structure aligned with their hierarchical one and ended up in the systems they built, their website. In the case of the online travel company, despite the fact that the architecture was thought agnostic from the countries, the teams has created a system divided by country because they were themselves organized by country. In the case of Vista, you have seen that the quality of the organization has a strong impact on the quality of the software. And this is one effect of the homomorphism. One property on the side has an impact on the same property on the other side. Organization system. But I didn't talk about what they put inside organizational structure. So they were testing 8 statements, but I only listed 3 of them. And here you have a large loss of team members affect knowledge retention and therefore quality. The more contributors to a component belong to the same team, the higher the quality. The closer the person with decision-making power over a component is to the engineer who built it, the better quality. And oddly enough, these criteria are at the opposite to the disintegration of communication that was described by Conway. So maybe now you would like to know if we can avoid the Conway law, right? No? No one? Yeah, it would be nice. In fact, you can't avoid it. It will apply anyway. But you can learn how to better manage its effect. Conway said that the forward design must be organized according to the need for communication. So it means that your problem, you have to reduce it in smaller problems in order to find your subsystem. Then define the need for interfacing. And once you have that, you will be able to define an organization where the communication structure will be limited to what is strictly necessary. And this will mark out area of autonomy for your teams without over communication, synchronization, and so on. But you also know that the first design is never the best one, and that business need will also evolve with time. So it means that this organization has to be flexible enough in its structure to be able to design effectively. And now, without detailing how to proceed for each of those steps, Melvin Conway just described a new kind of organization and system design method that will be later called as the inverse Conway maneuver. So this term was coined by Johnny Leroy and Matt Simmons in dealing with tricky legacy platforms. And the idea is to break down the silos that limit the efficiency of the teams by reorganizing. However, it might not be realistic to reorganize in some cases. And remember that this is the structure of the communication that will be reflected inside your software, in your system, and not directly your hierarchical structure. It will be easier to have an impact on the way people communicate rather than addressing the sensitive topic of an administrative reorganization. However, in 2015, the IT zone sees the rise of the microservices. And James Lewis goes even further. So he's one technical director at Southworks. He said that an organization should focus on a structure that corresponds to the systems they want to build, instead of asking existing teams to follow an architecture on paper, because in that case, you will have really the negative effect of the Conway's law. So what is remarkable is that even without claiming to be from the school of the inverse Conway maneuver, similar observations are shared by other members of the IT zone. In 2017, Jan Bosch, professor at the Chalmers University of Technology and former vice president of the Nokia Research Center, presented the BEIPO model. You already heard about BEIPO? No? So the idea of that method is always start from defining how you want to create value for your users and how you want to generate revenue. This is the B here that stands for business, and this is the starting point of this method. Then you can define the architecture, the technical choices that will make that business happen. And once the architecture is defined, you can think about all the processes and the tool required to build and to create this architecture. And once you have the B, the A, and your P, you can think about the competencies required to achieve all the things. So finally think about the organization. But what Jan Bosch noticed is that usually organizations are not BAPO, they are OPAB instead. It means that they always start from an existing organization and define processes out of sheer convenience. So they have Michael since 10 years in the company, he's a validator, you will end up with a validation process anyway. You don't know the value of it, but you will have it, right? And these processes will create an accidental architecture that will be led by the past of the company rather than its future. And mechanically, this will limit our ability to do the business and to innovate. He knows about that because he came from Nokia, right? Sorry. And what is really interesting as well is that if you go back to Nigel Bevan, in his paper, he gave us 5 steps to go over the problem we have seen on the McKinney website. And these steps in order perfectly align with the BEIPO model. But these steps are meant for a web page. So you might be curious of what we can do when we are designing a system or creating a software product to better manage the Conway law. So I will give you some insight on how to perform an inverse Conway maneuver through the BEIPO model, using tools that you may know already inside the IT zone. So to deal with the B and the A, you have to know that in 2003, a kind of revolution happened in the IT zone with the publication of domain-driven design from Eric Evans. So the philosophy of domain-driven design is to bring back the business in the heart of software development. The idea is to always start from the analysis of the problem, even before choosing your architecture, technical choices, and the implementation, and so on. So domain-driven design separates 2 spaces, the problem space, which corresponds to the business, and the solution space, which corresponds to the architecture. Because as engineers, we all have this natural bias of already constructing a solution in our mind, even before having fully understand the problem. And sometimes even before having fully explained the problem. So how do we proceed? To analyze a problem, you don't need a fancy organization. You just have to take the business experts, you put them in a room with cross-functional people, and you make them talk about the domain. They will discover then the business concept, their characteristic, to map out the business need. Technically, you can do that through an event storming, which is an emergent design workshop invented by Alberto Brandolini. This is a really simple workshop where all the attendees list the domain events important in the problems they are trying to solve. And then these events will be ordered according to a timeline to highlight the flow of business value creation. And what is really interesting there is that these domain events will also help us to list the business concepts. Why do we do that? Because we will therefore analyze the spaces and the life cycle of these concepts. Because you will see that some of them are creating together, some of them will die together, some other will appear at a certain moment of the timeline. And those spaces, in fact, will represent your subsystem. In domain-driven design, this is also what we call bounded context, which is just another word. And this is the starting point to define your solution. So then we will create the architecture from that. But we will use a context map, which is the only tool I know that will help you to take into account the effect of the Conway's law. So the first thing you have to determine is the need for interfacing. Here, we say that payment, here, the system payment, need to retrieve data from shopping through an open host service of OHS. This is the same thing as an API. ACL, I won't explain that, but this is an integration strategy, but never mind. Once you have defined your need for interfacing, you will have to determine what is the power balance regarding the business of this system. There is several relationships, but here we'll talk only about the mutually dependent. It means that if one of them fails, they will both fail. Because if you add something in your cart, you are not able to pay, it's a failure. You can't add something in your cart, but you can pay, this is also a failure for the user, right? And why are we doing that? Because then we will analyze the way the related teams are working together to see if there is some kind of orthogonality between the structure of the organization and the structure of the system. So let's say they are in a customer-supplier relationship. It means that payment there will have to negotiate in order to prioritize their need in the backlog of shopping. And shopping can say, nah, we won't do that, or we do that later. Is it a good idea when you know that they are mutually dependent? So it means that if payment is not able to develop what they need to develop, shopping will fail as well. So they should rather enter another typology of relationship, which is a partnership, which means that they will have to create together the backlog, think about the way they will release their software, and so on and so on. So I will talk about all the things about context map, but it was just to give you an idea. That way you will be able to see if there is some negative effect with the Conway's law. But the thing is, what we call strategic domain-driven design won't give you much guidance on how to organize, because it won't tell you if you need several teams on a same subsystem or not. It will only talk about teams that will create value for end users. So infrastructure teams, domain-driven design will not really talk about that. But fortunately, in 2019, is released team topologies that deals with the P and the O, process and organization. Who heard about team topologies already? Some of you? So this is a dynamic pattern of organization in the direct line of the inverse Conway maneuvers that perfectly align with the strategic domain-driven design. So to give you some insight about it, because we won't be able to talk about everything about team topology, regarding the process, as you may know today, most of the time, when people build a team, they add more and more people so they can fit with the complexity of the problems they are in charge of. Usually they do something like that. Team topology say that you should do the reverse. Limit the size of the software to the connective load to the team can handle. Otherwise, they will be burned. And you won't have the expected quality, and it might not work at all. So it also means that the team should have cross-functional people to be able to do the whole life cycle of the software, and one clear ownership, one component to one team with enough bandwidth to be able to deal with it. And I said that it was a dynamic pattern, but why? If we go back to this example, let's say that shopping and payments, they discover that there's kind of easiness around their interface here with duplicated work. In team topologies, we say that they can enter a new way of interaction, which is named as collaboration. Seems odd, but this is the name they give to that. So it means that they will have to work together to find a solution to problems they are not used to. And because this is a problem they are not used to, and they have to deal with their day-to-day work as well, the cognitive load will increase a lot. So it also means that this phase should be as small as possible. Nearly about the end. So it has to be a small phase, right? And let's say that they define that this is a better architecture for the system. In the spirit of team topologies, you will have to figure out if checkouts doesn't represent too much cognitive load for shopping and payment. If so, it means that you will have to pop out a checkout team, easy to say, but this is the philosophy, to deal with the checkout subsystem. And since now you had the need for interfacing between the three systems, you will enter another way of interaction, which is called X as a service. That means that the shopping team here will offer a service to the checkout team in a way that it will be enough autonomous in order to integrate it. So it can be an API with enough documentation, but we have to make sure that we limit the communication to what is strictly necessary. So there is 3 modes of interaction, and for types of teams, like I said, I won't dig deeper in team topologies, but if you want to learn more about it, you can go to teamtopologies.com. Actually, Docker is using that as an organization pattern. So now you learn that we will be able to better manage the effect of the Conway's law through the BAPO model using domain-driven design and team topologies. If you have any doubts, you can take a look at Accelerate, scientific study about performance of software delivery, as intended to support the efficiency of the inverse Conway maneuver. However, before you leave, you have to know that this is not a magic wand. Reorganizing will not ensure you to have the desired architecture. Because if like Matthias Vera said, the system is rigid to modification, reorganizing will have a limited impact. In other words, reorganization won't fix a bad design. You will have to work on the sanitization of your system to make it more flexible before thinking about reorganizing. So you have to see the Conway's law has a constraint that will apply on all the things you do, and the inverse Conway maneuver one way, which is not a silver bullet, that might help you to deal with the effect of the Conway's law. But keep in mind that it will be easier to work on the communication rather than talking about your organization. And if it doesn't work with communication, reorganize. But don't do that often, right? Because it has a huge cost regarding human people reorganizing, right? You do that every 2 months, people will get mad. And if both can work or you can't do that, it means that if you apply the BAPO model, you will have to do trade-off regarding the architecture or the business. So I'm Julien Topçu, I'm a technical coach at Shodo, French consulting company specialized in domain-driven design. In my great kindness, I brought you back to Vox Ticino, but stay alert and pay attention to your beliefs, otherwise you can find yourself forever stuck in the IT zone. Thank you very much.